Everywhere you look nowadays, you see companies using the term AI in the world of food. It reminds me back, I think around 2009, 2010, I was working for a company called Gigome, and we had a conference on cloud computing. And in those early days, cloud computing meant something pretty specific. The technologists were talking about a certain type of architecture and a certain way of computing that was very specific. But it wasn't long before you saw companies like Microsoft and others starting to grab onto the term and using it in advertisements that eventually showed up at the Super Bowl. And over time, it kind of lost some of the meaning. I mean, it was still like an interesting trend and a big movement in the world of computing, but it did start to lose a little bit of its meaning after it got a little bit diluted. And I have to wonder if that's happening to a certain degree with artificial intelligence. You're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing it used in advertisements. You're seeing companies use it in the world of food. That said, I do think there are some companies who are legitimately using artificial intelligence to do interesting things in food, to help them develop new products faster, to gain new and interesting consumer insights, to help them just create entirely new types of food that wouldn't be possible without using AI. And one of those companies is called Notco. And so I wanted to catch up with them because this past week, they'd actually announced a joint venture with one of the biggest food brands in the world, a company called Kraft Heinz. I'm sure most of you have heard of. And I thought that was a really interesting joint venture. And it was very much centered on Kraft Heinz wanting to utilize the capabilities that Notco had developed around their AI, which they call Giuseppe, to develop new and interesting food products, specifically plant-based and alternative protein-based food products. And so that was just really fascinating to me that one of the biggest food companies would want to do a joint venture, a pretty serious commitment with a company like this. And so I thought I'd catch up with their CEO, Matias. He was kind enough to join me and join me for the podcast. And I really dug deep. I kind of got nerdy with him. Wanted to ask you, what specifically are you doing with your AI? What does it mean when you say AI? How is this discovering new types of food? How did you build this? And Matias really talked about this. He opened up, explained what he's building. And I thought it was a really interesting conversation. If you want to listen to more podcasts, you know where to get them. Get them at The Spoon. You can find them in the regular podcast spaces as well. We're on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all those other places as well. So check those out. If you haven't given us a review, please do so. It always really helps if you can give us a good 5-star review in Apple Podcasts if you like what you're hearing. And that's really it. I appreciate it. All right, that's it. Let's get to my conversation with Matias Muchnick of Notco. Hey, well, I have with me today Matias Muchnick, the CEO, co-founder of Notco. How you doing, Matias?
I'm very well. Very, very well. A little bit chilly here in New York, but well.
Thanks for joining me. You guys have a ton going on. I mean, you have partnerships, you're raising money, all this different stuff. And it seems like Notco has been kind of taking the alternative protein universe by storm ever since you guys launched. And especially, here in America, I think you guys entered the U.S., I think, in 2021 with your Not Milk, right?
Exactly.
Well, let's get into kind of the backstory, and we can kind of go through all the products a little bit later. But I think you guys were founded originally in Chile?
Yes, sir. I mean, the three of the founders are Chileans. I'm the only non-scientist. I was working on the finance side when I realized that I wanted to go with my passion, which was food. And in understanding a little bit why we got to that place in the food space that we were 5 years ago, with an industry that was leading the causes of probably every major environmental ill known to humankind. We're sending rockets to Mars and we're eating worse than our grandparents did, right? So there was a lot of confusion going on. One day eggs are good for you, the next day eggs are bad for you. One day milk is good, the next day milk is bad. So we tried to understand and figure out what was the real problem, right? And I want to jump directly into that. I mean, the problem was that food R&D and food technology really was three guys in a lab coding an experimental kitchen, doing trial and error. I'm reading research papers of 1980s on how to apply soy to replace animal-based ingredients. That was it, right? Yeah, yep. So whenever you have an industry that has a very obsolete technology, then a lot of bad things happen, right? And especially when the knowledge is not created by scientists, more by marketeers, then you really got something going on, right? And I did exactly the same parallel that I saw in the finance side. So, when the subprime crisis hit, You had these big banks selling overly complex products to consumers that were totally disconnected to what they were buying. And when regulators became the regulator, and that was it, right? So, Mike, we had kind of like the same red flags in the food space that we did have in the finance industry in the subprime crisis. So, again, I thought it was a very good idea for me to go to come to the US, study at Berkeley, relate myself a lot with the biochemistry department to really understand what was going on. And what I saw there was that 99% of that department worked in pharma. Pharma was doing unbelievable stuff when it comes to research and development, when it comes to equipment, the use of artificial intelligence. This was 2015, so gene editing started to really boom with CRISPR, right?
Yeah.
So all of the things that I saw there, and I looked at the food industry, we were like the poor brothers of pharma. So together with Karim, I connected with Karim. I connected with Pablo. Karim was a computer science PhD and postdoc from Harvard. He used to take data from telescopes and applied machine learning algorithms for astronomers to understand the composition of a star, the density of the atmosphere, so on and so forth. And Pablo was an expert in plant genome, biochemist, biotech doctor, and postdoc from UC Davis. And the three of us were Chileans. So we figured out this was going to be something that we were building from Latin America to the world. Because of, mainly we were Chilean, so we wanted to go back and see if we could start, a unicorn company from Latin America.
You looked and saw around 2015 how the world of biotech, pharma, was using advanced techniques like AI to really drive innovation in food. You looked at the poor brother of food, like it's like I said, it's like three guys in a sitting in a lab making guesses, like in a developmental kitchen. And so you guys, from the get-go, were thinking, let's use AI to figure out and drive faster innovation in food.
Yeah, so this was the problem that we understood there was, which is there's a very poor understanding of the food that we love to eat, right? Of eggs, cheese, milk, ice cream, burgers, meat, whatever we love to eat, we have no idea how to describe it, right? Is it the molecular data that will tell me what a piece of meat is? Or is it, the physical chemical data? What kind of dimensions of data allow me to really understand what a product is, right? What a food product is. And then on the other side, you have more than 300,000 species of plants in the world, and you have no idea what they can do. You have no idea what combination of plants can create, the taste of milk or the color of meat, or so on and so forth, right? You would never expect for a human being to understand that the combination of pineapple and cabbage can create the taste of milk, or the combination of strawberries, tomato and peaches can create the taste of a chicken nugget. And that's what's relevant here. You utilize, technology to really kind of like develop knowledge that we don't have in the industry, right? And starting with AI. The AI, the artificial intelligence side is a platform that allows you to really create solutions, right? So one of the biggest problems was R&D, but one of the biggest problems was the understanding of food. And then if you created an artificial intelligence algorithm that would allow you to predict which combination of plant-based ingredients should result in the same sensory experience as a target product, then you can actually start, moving the needle of sustainability, because it's not, you're not going to do any different if you're not putting out there a product that has the same value proposition in terms of taste, but at the same price, in the same scale, and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit the mission of Notco, is to really drive the mainstream market attention and not just the vegan vegetarians or anything out there that is a niche or a premium side of the market. And artificial intelligence was our approach. When you build a company that is more tech-based, then you could really create modules to solve different problems that you get along the way of scaling as well, right? One problem is the formulation process, and really is a problem, right, for big food companies. But there's another problem. There's problems that, when you create, a trial and you go to industrial processing, is different from a prototype in the lab. Molecules became different. So how do we gather enough information to make a robust algorithm that not only allows you to get a great prototype, but a great mass, scale production product, right? That you put it on the shelf and it performs really well. So that's a little bit of why we created tech, to really kind of be the base of this company, to scale it at a place that maybe we never imagined.
In the last few years, I've been watching the world of food, and I've seen some companies rise up to start to do this. We've seen Climax working on doing, I guess, using AI to create the next generation of cheese. A company I wrote about like last year, Kingdom Supercultures, is trying to do this with microbes. And you guys were even before all of them. But, AI is kind of a buzzword. I think a lot of people, much like cloud computing before, people just kind of throw it around. Can you talk specifically about what you're doing? You have these attributes, you're creating a big database, and you're allowing the compute to kind of understand what the best pairings are at a high level. But can you kind of get a little bit into the weeds, like how it all works?
Yeah, for sure. So, again, when I, your machine learning will always be directly proportionate to the amount of data and the dimensions of data that you recollect, right? So, the very beginning for us is understanding what data was relevant for the objective that we were trying to do, which was replacing plants with animals, right? Or animals with plants. And so first and foremost, we needed to understand what was important for us to extract from plants in order for an algorithm to understand the underlying patterns between the molecular components, physical chemical components, spectral components in food, and the human perception of taste, texture, smell, and color, right? We first need to create an understanding of how the human brain actually works when it comes to food. Because the interesting thing here is we're trying to do a general purpose artificial intelligence, right? It's not an algorithm that is great at doing mayo or burgers or yogurt, right? The things that you like from a burger are very different from what you like from a yogurt, and the same to a mayo, and the same to, So how we could get a real understanding of the human brain in order to start creating an algorithm that would attack all of the categories of products that we have out there. And that was super, super important from the get-go. So we recollect databases that describe animal-based products, and we have, a complete database that, is coming from plant-based ingredients, right? And we put it into the test. So we say, okay, it's called Giuseppe, right? So the algorithm is called Giuseppe. We have different modules of the algorithm. And Giuseppe basically, Giuseppe's output first are formulations. So, we want to replicate a type of cheese, and the algorithm comes up with this crazy amount of, recipes and processes attached to each, ingredient that we put into the test. We have a team of 15 chefs in the artificial intelligence department that basically take these products, put it on a test, and then we have a trained panel that feedbacks the algorithm. Right. So being that, maybe the formulation was good or bad, we feedback the algorithm with the good things and the bad things. So we feedback the algorithm many dimensions of sensorial aspects, and we feedback the algorithm of many, physical, chemical, mass spec, gas specs, and other, types of data. So the algorithm keeps getting better because it's establishing patterns, right? If I add this, this happens to the taste. If I add this, this happens to the color, and so on and so forth, right? So you get an algorithm that is working and improving every single day, with 1,000 recipes, right? All the time. But it's not only that, right? So the algorithm gets better, more accurate, but there's other things. For example, we created a module called Toolbox. And Toolbox is set up to create an optimization of the amount of experiments that you need to do in a combination of problems. For example, let's say, frothing a plant-based milk, right? It appears to be very simple, but it's not, especially when you're trying to create a taste, then you have some elements that, are making your product not foam, right? Because it has anti-foaming agents, right? So how can you kind of like establish an equation to get there faster, right? So Toolbox, what it does is optimizes, and takes you to, it takes the 80-20 way faster, right? So instead of starting from scratch, every food formulation that you want to create or any experiment that you want to create, the AI, what it's doing is telling the food scientist to go through different routes, but instead of, spending 3 months of experimentation, it spends 1 week, because every single set of experiments are being optimized by the algorithm, understanding the patterns or the underlying patterns between results and experiments. And that is fascinating. And maybe there's where I connect a little bit with what we're doing with Kraft Heinz. Kraft Heinz said, guys, you do products, and food products in a quality we've never seen before, in a pace we've never seen before, in an agility we've never seen before, but also an execution that we haven't seen before. I mean, you guys have taken 5% of market share of the burger category, in Chile. You've had taken, things that are mainstream and that are appealing to the mass market. How do you guys do it, and how can actually we can partner up? So that's a little bit of a little, more of the story behind the details of the tech, and also how we're able to execute and capitalize the value of the tech.
That's interesting. So it sounds like you have all these different attributes. You were having the Giuseppe create recipes based on these attributes and kind of pass warnings and optimization around that. It sounds like you're putting some of them into the lab, letting your chefs within that department cook them, and then you're letting judges give back probably structured criticism and the feedback around the recipes, and that feeds back into the data and the compute engine. And this is kind of this just process and that you've created that just allows for fast iteration.
Yes,
it's a new way to do things. And like you said, you alluded to the fact that because of this craft saw what you're doing, they obviously are a more old world way of doing things, and said, "Hey, can we use some of your technology, your platform to help us?"
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And there's, to be clear about it, there are 4 modules that are working today with our food science team and R&D team, and the tech team has developed because we've encountered certain problematics. One of the things that is most important as well is to understand how to balance the equation when you change variables in a formulation, right? So this is maybe more technical, right? So, and especially in COVID, because COVID messed up the supply chain, right? So, for example, you were using, a soy protein isolate from one supplier, and you had to change it to another supplier. Now that changes everything. The parts per million in a formulation of certain ingredients could create, another taste profile of your product. So when you change from one protein isolate to another, you're going to change the whole, formulation. That's a pain in the butt for absolutely every single company out there. At the very beginning, we didn't know, and when we started to operate this company in a cross-category manner, and we changed suppliers, it changed everything. And the amount of work for R&D and for procurement is so steep. So what we said is, okay, why don't we use AI to actually find the way we can balance equations or balance formulations when you change variables, right? And that is something that has been very appealing for other companies as well, because they suffer, all of them suffer this, right? So again, that module is called discovery. So we create, as we are a tech-based company, we create modules to solve real problems of the food industry, to be better and to produce food products faster, better, more accurate, less costly, more affordable, and just better than the rest. And this is something that, of course, we gave access to Kraft Heinz before partnering up with them. And what they saw was something that they couldn't even believe, right? I mean, we were operating in a way that is, and believe me, they've seen other companies in the space operate, and they were just super impressed to what we were doing.
Just to kind of go into a little bit of details for the listeners who don't know the news, and I wrote an article about your partnership. So you created basically a joint venture. So you're getting in fully in bed with Kraft and creating a new company, basically a joint venture between Kraft Heinz and Notco. And it's to create a variety of consumer packaged good products for the U.S. market. And that can span meats, it can span cheeses, it can span all these different things. Yes. So that's a pretty big deal to do that level of partnership.
Yes, the answer is absolutely. I think it's something that just to kind of like double click on the story, because I think it's very important. The genuine approach. I mean, we've been in conversations with every major CPG out there, right? Every multinational, every startup, we've gathered conversations, and we hop on the conversation. Was at the end of the day, we're super open to see where we can drive this whole industry forward, because we're really moving the needle and making the difference. And so, in my take, there are different approaches from big companies, and generally are not very genuine. They do it because they think that our problem is distribution, And for them, they need innovation, right? And so kind of like every approach was a potential acquisition approach or was a complete exclusivity approach from, every single category. And it was like in the first meeting, you understood what were the real, kind of like intentions of the approach. And with Kraft Heinz, this was totally different. They were like, listen, guys, this is what you do great. And this is what we do great. And we don't want to mess what you do great at Notco standalone. And we don't want to mess up what we do great, which is not Kraft Heinz alone. So why don't we join together into this joint venture, right? And it's a joint venture that is led by you guys and you will appoint the CEO of this JV. What we want is your agility, your speed, your know-how of plant-based with the familiarity of our brands. They have Philadelphia, they have mac and cheese, they have Kraft singles, they have, Oscar Mayer. They have all of these, brands that are mass scale, have household penetration of around 70%, 80% of US households. And so they were like, why don't we bring superior plant-based products with familiarity of the brands that we hold and with your know-how of executing amazing, R&D based products. And we're like, yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. And they were doing it for the right reasons. And that's where I want to stop at saying, okay, this approach makes sense. And from the 10 months that we negotiated, nothing rose into the table that was like, oh, wait, you're doing this because of that, or you're trying to enter from another door. No, this was to be kept since the get-go to the finish line, exactly the same as we conversed at the very first meeting together. So really good approach, really good people, really genuine, really genuine awareness of we have the potential of changing the world significantly, and in reality of moving the needle of sustainability, we have the, coming together, we can do that. And we can do something that the plant-based world has not seen before. And
is this a deal that is exclusive, or like if suddenly another big CPG approaches you tomorrow, they can either license your technology or use it? Talk about the parameters around the,
Sure. We do have exclusivity. We do have exclusivity in certain categories of products, the ones that we, set this joint venture to work on. But this is a global partnership. And I had to point out, because I think you mentioned the US, it is a global partnership.
Okay.
We have the chance to actually launch products in every single geography that we want at the moment that we decide to. So are we open? I mean, we're not open to talk to many others, in the sense that we only have focus. We're a startup yet. We're still a scrappy startup, right? And, even though we do great stuff, we need to focus our attention on the things that matter. The things that matter are two: the business plan of Notco as it standalone, with our products of not milk, not burger, not chicken, and everything that we're launching now. But there's, and to attend the JV in the right manner. I mean, we will have, the R&D offices in San Francisco, in our offices of Notco, of the JV, I mean, all of the R&D capabilities will be served from San Francisco, from our offices, and the commercial execution will be headquartered in Kraft Heinz headquarters in Chicago, right? So again, it's a global partnership. We're always open to work upstream, downstream, and to hear from any companies that want to change the world in the direction that we are. So step by step, first, let's build a success case if we ever want to have the second.
It seems like a smart move by Kraft. I mean, I watch how slow these big CPG brands move. A lot of them seem like they've had the same 5 flagship products with maybe minute variations, 5% variations over my lifetime, but it's still the same soup or cheese or whatever. But looking at what they've done with you, I wonder if they're setting a template, you two are setting a template. Because I have to think that like traditional CPG, when you see the explosion that's happening in kind of, for example, the drink aisle, how exciting is the drink aisle when you go and look at all those great new drinks by these kind of emerging DTC consumer brands? I got to imagine the center of the grocery store are going to start seeing more innovation there. If you're an old school CPG brand and you're not using faster iteration, using new techniques like this, at some point, I think it's going to really kind of eat into your market share. So are you setting a template here?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think it's time for big companies to understand if they want to be the Blockbusters or the Netflix of CPG, right? They really have a chance of failing here. They really do. I mean, significantly. And I think that Kraft Heinz very intelligently decided to be a Netflix, powered by an AWS software of operations in the digital side. And we portray ourselves and this deal very similar to what Intel did. This is the Intel inside of food. It's not more than that, right? So that's what we want to elevate, and that allows you to elevate your brand standalone. That allows you to create this position and validation of a technology that this industry really, really needs in order to make the 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps up in terms of better products, better quality of products. So 100%, I'm sure that food companies need to start changing, but they need to know what to change. And that's another reason. That's another point, right? Sometimes they only think they need more, innovation in they acquire new brands, and that's the end of the brand. That's the end of the small guy, right? Big companies don't know how to handle smaller brands. There are only, few, I think I would say, only 5 examples of, making that work.
Yeah, they'll buy like their energy bar or like their drink, and they cordon it off, and it does their core business stays exactly the same. And they usually end up like killing the brand that they bought. So I know we have a few minutes left. If you were to look into the future of where you see AI driven food iteration going, I mean, I don't know if you're looking at things like quantum computing, for example, with how fast. I know that they haven't developed a general purpose quantum computing yet, but I'd imagine some of this newer technology even coming down the pike would make things even faster and create new types of food even quicker, I would imagine.
Yes, there's many things happening in the tech side. You need to understand if there will be applicable to the food space, right? Or how applicable they are. There's many companies doing great stuff, but there's another important point, which is that stuff really valuable for the players in the food industry? Sometimes we kind of like go out there and we plan things that involve so much computing power, right? But do you really need that computing power? You need to change maybe something else, right? So we are way more looking into kind of like the new technologies in the food space. We're looking way more into the precision fermentation. We're way more looking into, lab grown, and all of that type of science, which is used to be very pharma. Molecular biology and synthetic biology was pharma, right? So all of the capabilities on the scale up are now very, they are leveraging the chances of the plant-based synthetic biology, the food space synthetic biology science work better. And we just started doing that. And we just started companies, or looking at companies or seeing companies that are putting products out there in the market, which is fascinating. It's going to be the first time in ages that we have that present. So we're way looking more into that and how artificial intelligence can leverage the chance of being that a mass market, product than anything else.
So you guys see yourself taking your Giuseppe and your AI, that technology, and you're looking possibly to develop partnerships with precision fermentation companies and even cell culture meat companies?
Yes, sir. I think, again, we created this company as a tech-based company to create the solutions that the industry needs in order to scale things that really move the needle in terms of sustainability, right? And if that's precision fermentation, if that's lab grown, if that is whatever technology comes, then we will use it 100%.
Hey, Matias, thank you so much for spending time with me. I learned a lot.
Thank you so much, Mike.
All right. Well, that's it. Thank you, Matias, for spending time with me, going deep on what your AI Giuseppe does and how it helps create new food products. I am going to be keeping an eye on this new joint venture because I think it is an interesting one and maybe could set a kind of a template for some of these big food brands trying to figure out how they reinvent themselves with their products kind of going stale on the store shelves. And, this is maybe one new model for them to do that. Certainly joint ventures aren't like completely new, but I think this is the first time I've seen a CPG brand partner up with a tech platform company, which that's really what Notco is, right? Like they're a AI tech platform. And this was a uniquely new company that they created to help Kraft build new products. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. So, all right. We will be coming out with a new podcast in just another couple days. So just stay tuned for that, and we will talk to everyone soon.